and go. And I'm talking with Peter Heysen, the eldest son of Hans Heysen, here in Grandfather's studio in the beautiful property of Cedars here in Harndorf. And Peter's been very generous in showing me around the property and the beautiful gardens here. And anyone can come up now and visit Peter, I understand. It's open 7 days a week or 6 days a week?
6 days a week, Tuesday till Sunday. In the summer there's 3 tours a day because you can only go into the buildings with a guide because there's too many things lying about.
Valuable things, Peter.
Valuable things. Well, not all things are valuable in money, but they're valuable in memories, they're valuable in history.
And this is, like I was saying, we're here in the studio, which was built by Grandfather Hans in 1912, is that right?
Yes, roughly, yes.
Yeah, and as you can see behind us is the a replica of the...
well, it's an actual real, it's an unfinished oil, because how he used to start would he'd often do a drawing beside the subject that he wanted to, and then he would come back and do a drawing with more detail like this one. Then the next stage up was a watercolour, which we don't own, and then the final thing was to do an oil. Now the time difference between that could be weeks or years, but the significance of this one demonstrates his love for trees. He loved this tree on the road to Harndorf, and he heard it was going to be cut down for posts. So he made a plea to the owner not to chop it down and offered to buy the tree for the owner to leave it there, but it made 400 posts as the owner said it would. Now when Grandfather heard it, he just stopped work on this picture and it stood here. It's been like that since 1923, and it's still here on the easel as it was in 1923.
And I've just got a photograph here from a magazine of the time, the Australian Home Quarterly, and there is Grandfather Hans at the easel with this very painting in the same spot as we have Peter today. Now, what else can people expect to see, Peter? I know there are tea rooms which aren't open just at the moment, but they'll be open again soon, I'm sure.
Yes, we at the moment you can see the buildings, their contents, a lot of art, and inside the buildings is all by a guide, because it's really an educational trip.
Mm-hmm.
But what you see is not only art, it's the way they lived then, and it's also the family history. It's the history of a man who came out from Germany. He told me that he used to change addresses at 2 in the morning because that's when the landlords was asleep and they didn't have to pay the rent. So that's how poor they were, and yet in 1958 he became a Knight of the Realm, highly respected. So there was an example of somebody who came from poverty to some sort of recognition. Now, he wasn't one after money. In this very room, he said to me one day, and he pulled out a picture which I still have, I studied to Wanaka country, and he said, "Peter," he said, I keep all the pictures I love, and I only sell pictures to pay the bills." So he really was into his love of nature, his love of art. He really wasn't into making money. He was very generous. He gave to a lot of schools, spent time in schools, helped out of a lot of people. Certainly around the First World War, he at some risk to himself helped some of his countrymen. And in the Second World War, of course, 2 of his children fought for Australia and survived.
Wonderful. And I believe Nora, a daughter, was also made quite a name for herself as an artist in her own right, including some war service.
Yes, Nora was a daughter who watched him paint and took after him, and she won the Archibald Prize in 1938. Now, she was firstly the youngest person, Secondly, she was a woman. Thirdly, it wasn't a dour man looking out of a portrait. It was a brightly clad lady who was the wife of the Dutch consul. And it brought outrage. And the loudest voice was a male artist. He won the next year, so that quietened him down.
Oh, goodness.
But then she became an accredited war artist, was the first woman to go into a war zone, first woman artist from Australia to go into a war zone. She was a firm lady, and she had to be, because it was a world of men, and it was only in recent years that she was really recognised towards the end of her life, and we have a collection of her art here. We have about 700 of her works, and from drawings to oils, and she is really quite a magnificent artist. And there are even portraits of me, one when I was 2 with a page boy cut, which is still
we must see that.
me. Still embarrasses me.
Excellent, and we can you can see Nora's studio, of course, which is adjacent the gift shop as you walk into the property. So her likeness is there, and some of her works as well, Peter?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
They're both drawings and oils, and also my portrait, yes.
Wonderful. Now, the gardens themselves, you were telling me about how much trouble your grandfather Hans went to as well, and as your father David as well spent a lot of time bringing the gardens up to snuff.
Yes, because the garden was the source of his artistic subjects until Nora got going with still life, and grandfather sort of stopped doing that. But he loved his roses, loved his garden, but in those days it was only water from a bore, so the garden sort of moved. He'd water one area and that would grow up, and then he'd move to another area so that previous one would die back a bit. Now, of course, we're blessed with using recycled water from the local sewage works, and let's hope that more people can make more use of our recycled water. And now, of course, we can run the whole garden at once, and it's nice to wander and see some of the old plants. Excellent.
Now, in terms of expansion of the property and renovations, I understand that your CEO, Tori, has been very busy getting grants and funding together for restoration work. You've got a gallery coming up nearby which is going to be ready in the next 12 months or so?
Yes, it'll probably be 2 years. That's from a Commonwealth grant through the state government. It's going to be a $9 million building up the hill from here, partly dug into the ground, and there'll also be a restaurant, and the current shop will be turned into hopefully a room for the history of the Heysen family, which will impart some of the information that I've given you.
Excellent. Yeah. Now, also, you were showing me before some of the earlier works of the garden where the tennis court used to be, very popular for weddings. I understand that coming up this time of year, you'll be booked pretty solidly, I imagine.
Yeah, in the next few weeks, it'll start, yes. And we hope to improve that. It's all been, we've only got 1 or 2 paid people here, the rest are volunteers. Without the volunteers, we wouldn't be here. The volunteers are magnificent.
Now, just when people are having their weddings here, for example, do they bring their own catering in and set up marquees, or what can they do on site?
They can. I understand that it's really all that the Cedars supplies is a place for the wedding and to sign the documents, and seats for some of the guests. If people want to then add to that, the Cedars can arrange for marquee and catering, or they can do it themselves, yes.
Okay, we'll see if we can find some photographs of that, have a bit of a look. I'm sure someone's got some beautiful pictures. Yeah.
Yes, I don't have any.
Now, the house itself, called the Cedars,
yes.
Came into the family when?
It was built in the 1860s, modified. Grandfather bought it in 1912, and it was then modified over the next few years. It was turned into a more livable house, and a house that was orientated to a great extent for entertaining. In the dining room, which is a large room, there is a raised area which is like a stage, and the last international star I saw there with grandfather was Marcel Marceau, the mimist. Now you might think he couldn't speak, but he could speak French and English. Grandfather, of course, having lived in France for some years studying, could speak French too. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, and there was grandfather, aged 90, even older than me, and lively, and having great discussions about Paris and things. But before that was Dave Nellie Melba, and such people would come, and I don't think she performed. I think she was a great friend of grandfather's, but all sorts of people came, and they would have chamber orchestras would play on the stage, and the family and some of the friends would come and listen. So
now, am I correct in remembering that Anna Pavlova was a visitor here at one stage?
Yes, she was a visitor, and there's a picture above the fireplace that grandfather painted, autumn fruits and zinnias, especially for the house. She said to Hans, she said, "I like that picture, how much do you want?" He said, "I'm not selling it." So she pulled out a checkbook, wrote Hans Heysen, signed it and left the amount blank, and said, "You fill in how much you want." And he handed it back to her. He then painted a picture for her, sent it to Europe, and she returned it.
Oh.
So
she was quite the diva, I imagine.
But it really comes back to the fact that he didn't live for money. He lived for his art, and he lived, for the environment.
Well, funny you should mention that, because the Adelaide Hills generally is becoming much more aware, or has done over the last few years, decade or so, about the environment and the preservation of the historic buildings. And of course, we're only a stone's throw from Harndorf, one of the most recognisable historic villages anywhere in the Adelaide Hills. But grandfather Hans was a leader in that respect in terms of preserving the environment, I understand.
Yes, he with Sir Douglas Mawson helped found the Forest League, and I think probably one of the first environmental groups here in South Australia. And on this property he refused to have any trees cut down, any indigenous trees cut down. He was also a bit of a supporter of the indigenous people. I actually went to Hermansburg Mission once.
And he spent a lot of time in the Flinders Ranges too.
Yes, but there was an honour board in Hermansburg Mission out of Alice Springs with the name of Hans Heysen on, because he had contributed to getting a new water supply for them. And so his interest wasn't only around himself, but extended right out, and he was also gave some advice to Albert Namatjira through his teacher.
Of course, a very famous indigenous painter who rose to quite lofty status amongst even in European circles, I understand. Yes. Yeah. Was grandfather Hans, was he a great traveller? I know we've got a beautiful old car and a caravan in the shed outside, which he would take, I understand, to the Flinders Ranges certainly, but did he travel much beyond that?
In the 1930s he went to Europe and took his daughters. That was, as far as I know, his only European trip. He used to go to Sydney to visit relatives because he married Sally Bartels, whose father was Adolf Bartels, who was last mayor of Adelaide in 1872. Now the Bartels family, they had quite a few children, and through that and Adolf Bartels' wife, who was my great-grandmother, through that family, they had quite a few relatives in Melbourne and Sydney. There was some trouble with a lot of them during the First World War, but So there were relatives in Sydney and in Melbourne, so he used to go to both those places, and he went numerous times up to the Flinders Ranges. The first time he took a train up. The second time my father drove him in a Ford Model A, and there's a Ford Model A sitting in the garage here.
Yep.
With the caravan that he took, which was, you might wonder when it's in the garage how you got into it, but of course it was a pop top. And the top would go up and you could walk round in it, and there's a little stove in it and 2 beds, and it went up to the Flinders on numerous occasions.
Was that of his own design and construction? Or?
No, it was built by Norman Brothers, and after he ceased to go up there, it was then used as a bird cage.
Oh dear.
And on his centenary, 1977, the son of one of the Norman Brothers restored it, and it's now restored and back.
Beautifully too, I should point out. Yeah.
And it's now restored and back in the garage beside the car.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for your time. And sitting here, I've got a bit of a chill down my spine with sitting in this wonderful, beautiful studio here on the Cedars. And thank you very much. And I encourage anybody to come up and visit the Cedars because it's one of the most beautiful properties anywhere in the Adelaide Hills, I think. And of course, with this wonderful history. Thank you again.